All right. Matrices. So what is a matrix? Well, it's just like putting a bunch of numbers in a box. Yeah. So you are arranging it in a rectangle. You've got rows and columns. We put square brackets around them. We'll be able to do math with these numbers in boxes, and we'll see why we do it. Now, they're most often used to organize your data. We're going to see how and why we can simplify our systems of equations. So for example, what we used to have, if we had 3x plus 2y equals 7 and 5x minus y equals 3, we would write this as a matrix maybe like this. Well, yes, like this. This is a special type of matrix we'll later learn as an augmented matrix. But what do? We save time by not having to write x's and not having to write y's and not having to write equal signs. And by doing that, we organize our data. We know that the first column stood for our x values, our second column stood for our y values, our last column stood for our constants, and it organizes our data. And then if we have all of our data organized in the same way, then the math that we do with our data can help us solve. So with our system of equations, as it says here, it's concentrating only on the coefficients and not on anything else. So a little bit about matrices. Horizontal entries are the rows, the vertical entries are the columns. When we're talking about the size of a matrix, its dimensions, it's always the rows by the columns. So if you were saying that you have here I've got an example right here, a 3 by 4 matrix, it has 3 rows and 4 columns. And so I always remember that matrices rock, and that helps you remember rows first and then columns after that. So you are, yeah, well, it has to work out perfectly for the acronym, right? It's got the English and the German spelling of columns built into one, maybe. I have no idea what the word column is in German. I just imagine that it would start with a K, if it does start with that sound. Do you know what a column is? And
I wouldn't be surprised. Can we actually, that's the way we spell columns? C-K-O-L.
no, it's not even close. Oh well. All right. So our dimensions is sometimes called our order or our size. So here's 3. Quickly write down the order of those 3. Like that quick. Yeah. The order is another word for the dimension. So this one would be a 1 by 3 or 3 by 1? 3 rows, 1 column. Matrices rock. All right, how'd you do on this one? A 4 by 3? Yes, and a 1 by 4. Some other notation stuff. We use capital letters when we're naming matrices. As you saw here, this is matrix M, matrix P, and matrix S. Those are with capital letters. And we use small letters or lowercase letters to represent the different entries. Okay? So on this one, the middle one here, matrix P, I would call this 6 element 3rd row, 2nd column. Little comma in between. I sometimes you'll find without with matrices, sometimes they don't even put the comma in. Yeah, just like 1, 3 instead of putting the comma in because it's kind of obvious. If you have a big enough matrix that you get past the tens, then the comma helps you so you know.
But then you just guess.
Then you just guess. So even in the notation of a specific element, it's always row first and then column. Matrices rock.
It's going to mess up with computer science. In computer science, we use things called matrices, which are similar, but we start at 0 instead of 1.
That part isn't too bad. So here they have the commas. Up here I did put them without the commas. You can choose if you want to put a comma or not. You like the comma, separating things? Here's our matrix M. What is M13?
It's 0.
It's 0. Row 1, third column, the element is 0. M34, E. And M24, pi. What's the order of this matrix?
3, 4.
3 by 4.
Or 34.
Some more definitions. Ooh. A column matrix is a matrix with one column. A row matrix is a matrix with one row. A square matrix has the same number of rows as columns. There is not a circle matrix. A zero matrix is a matrix where all of the entries are 0. An identity matrix, now this is the first one that isn't intuitive, is a square matrix with ones along the diagonal. Now, the word identity in math is used in a bunch of different places, and it's basically connected to the idea of 1, right? What happens when you multiply 1 by 8? You get 8. Multiplying by 1 doesn't change the value. So we're going to come up with later on, we're going to find out we want a matrix where you multiply something by a matrix and it doesn't change anything. And that's what this matrix will do.
But so the fact that the ones are the other.
The ones have to be on that diagonal. We're going to find out. No, they have to be diagonal this way.
It can't be diagonal the other way, it just doesn't work.
That's right. Ooh, I forgot I put this puzzle on here. All right. Transpose of a matrix is the matrix found by interchanging the rows with the columns. Okay? So if I've got this matrix here, the transpose of this matrix 4, 3, 2, -1, 5. So column 1 becomes row 1. Column 2 becomes row 2.
So it's just row 2,
And row 1 became column 1, and row 2 became column 2. So you're just switching the rows and the columns. Now we don't use the transpose very much, but there is. So we got A, B, C, F, E, D. And now some math.
I love math.
Let's add and subtract matrices. So in order to add or subtract matrices, you have to add corresponding elements or corresponding entries. So here is an important thing. You can't just add any matrices together. They have to be the same size or the same order in order to add them. So here I have two square matrices that are both 3 by 3. And I just go, and you'll never have to show the work in between. Okay? But you add corresponding elements. So this one here in blue and this one in blue end up making this one in blue. Because 1 plus 7 becomes 8. And so if I pick another element like this one in the bottom corner and this one in the bottom corner, that becomes 3. You do not have to write that part in the middle. Okay?
What does the 0 plus 0 make?
That's right. That's right. 0 plus 0 is 8. That is good. Right? It's like, what did the 0 say to the 8? This is for you, Riley.
I'm so excited. I don't know
Nice belt.
Have you seen that Chinese have you shown
This is such a good
the
class.
jokes that
Like it's real, like,
when
what is
the
this?
sign comes
All my classes in grade 12 are
It's
just,
like,
have
and
always
then
just been really fun.
So it's
Oh, that's
Like,
good.
They've just been enjoyable because the content has all gotten a lot harder, but we always just joke around while we're doing it.
That's
I absolutely hate every other class.
Mr.
I mean,
All right.
classes are actually just a lot of
this is
fun.
the favorite
Scalar.
class I have going on at the moment.
Scalar multiplication.
Yeah, it is. Well, I got this football.
If you multiply a matrix by a number, so if you have a number in front, and we'll say that that's scalar multiplication because we'll define different types of multiplication with matrices. So the word scalar, we're going to learn it's a fancy word for number in front. Okay? It's another fancy word for number. This unit has lots of fancy words for numbers because numbers inside the matrix are called elements. Number outside the matrix is called a scalar. And here, if we're multiplying by a scalar, each element inside the matrix gets multiplied by that number. So again, you don't need to show this because you're basically like this massive distribution thing happening here. And so if I do 2 times 5, I get 10. Nothing too crazy. All right, we're going to stop